Welcome to Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things, the podcast show. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts. And today we are chatting about how to harmonize art with design and bring a brand to life. And my guest today is Phillip J. Clayton. He is a brand consultant and he has been in this industry for a long time. And he is calling in today from Jamaica. I'm so excited you're here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we were just saying before, I think what's so cool, I've been doing the show a long time, how you meet people and how you and I connected because of a post of someone else and
Yeah.
never knew each other and started talking about brand. And I was like, let's have you on the show. So I'm excited you're here. And I always like to kind of start, at the very beginning. And I know you say you were a fine artist first, but I'd love to know when you were like a young kid, where did art kind of lay in your life? Were you always an artist? Did someone encourage you? Where did this love for art come when you were a child?
So believe it or not, I'm one of the fortunate ones. I was born into art. My mother actually did embroidery, really good embroidery. My father was a fine artist as well, and he also worked in advertising. So I grew up in a house with the books, the tools, the thinking, everything. My father said to me one day that not well. He told my aunt. He said that he thinks I'm a better artist. But I think I learned everything I learned from him. I just improved on it. Where he probably was getting, he's been in for so long. He's like, okay, I need to do something else. I think I took it further, but that's just I think with time and the new technology. But yeah, I grew up in a house of art, and that's holistically art, like music, visual, writing. Um, I actually used to sing, but I don't do it anymore.
Back in the day, yes.
Yeah, my sister and I actually sang "Edelweiss" from The Sound of Music in front of a huge auditorium when we were children. So we
I
learned
love
to
that.
sing growing up, and yeah, it was just art. I was surrounded. I used to sit by my father's, no, in my father's office, watch him at his desk working. He would build mock-ups of actual billboards back then because we didn't have mock-ups like Photoshop and different things. So I'd watch him build these mock-ups, and he'd have to present them with color separations and everything to the agencies. And I was like fascinated with this. I used to just be lying. I lied on my stomach. I was just in there all the time. And I was reading his letter set book. I fell in love with type. I didn't know what a logo was. I just saw these things, and I was like, wow, I want to do that. And I started to practice the actual typography, not knowing that there was actually a system to get the type. I was drawing these by hand. So then he started teaching me art as I got older, art principles of art. Not so much design, mostly art. Design became something later for me, but
I love that.
I could keep going, but it's a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
story.
no, I think it's always interesting because I do think, some people did grow up with it, some people
Right.
didn't but loved it, but the parents maybe weren't supportive, some were, some found it later. So, you grew up around this, so it's a part of who you are.
Yeah.
So, when you were in the fine arts, was there a type of medium that you found that you either were really great at or you really gravitated towards?
The only thing I could possibly say was I became really good at visual art, which included sculptures. Never really mastered sculptures, but sculpting, but I loved it. I did. I was more of a conceptual artist, I guess I possibly they would say, because I could draw really well, but I never draw a portrait. I just didn't like drawing people's faces, so it would always suck. And it wasn't because I couldn't. I just never put effort into it. But you give me a space, massive space, like a big canvas, and I would just explode color everywhere, and I would. Let's backtrack a little bit. So art, my life in that art world was trying to find who I am, trying to
Mhm.
define my styles or my skills. And it was during a very dark time, I'd call it. That's my dark part, that my dark past. And what happened, I used to paint really muddy and dark all the time. The concepts were interesting, but it was dark. So I realized people started to, comment on it. And I was like, I'm more than this. And I started to explore color. So I realized I can do the same themes and color in really vibrant colors, and nobody would care because now it's pretty, right? So I was learning about people while I'm learning about myself. I was like, this is so strange. Like I just did the same thing, but now it's like I guess more colorful, and you like it. but it's the same. It's a pretty morbid concept. And so I started to define myself based on the way I think about things and saw things around me. But my favorite medium would be difficult because I did photography, painting, printing. Yes, printmaking is really what it was labeled, but it's really like press printing with
Mhm.
the actual press, and you had lithographic and different forms of it. But I just like to find new things and find try to put the same ideas in there, but I'm presenting them differently, basically. So I never had a separation or a favorite. I just said, all right, if I did this in photography, I want to see what this looks like in print. I want to see what this looks like in what would a sculpted form look like to represent this idea. So I don't have a favorite, but visual, I guess I just put visual. I
Well,
learned music.
I was gonna say on that because I think what's always interesting, I agree with what you're saying. I think someone who is a true creative
Yeah.
really looks at art and creativity as a whole. Maybe they're not great at creating in that medium, but
Right.
they're experiencing it. But then you do see, I'm going to use the word artist or creative, focus on one area and really niche, and that's
Mhm.
their thing. Do you think that there is an advantage or disadvantage to niching versus kind of being a little bit more expansive?
Uh, I think the easy answer for me would be yeah. Whether it's for business or not, if you find something that you're really good at, or you become really good at it over time, if you keep doing that same thing, um, it's always an advantage. The only problem is, I think the idea of niche has is limited. The thinking behind it for a lot of people. Uh, when you're niching, it doesn't mean you don't explore other things. What you're really trying to do is to find value to add to what you're doing, and you can leverage that position when you have, as I say, knowledge is power. The more you learn, I think the more you can do with that one thing. If you're going to just do that one thing over and over, you will become a master of that one thing, and that's great. But then, and that's fine. I mean, you can always get somebody else to help you with other things. I'm not saying you need to go generalize in every area, but I like the idea of niching as a vehicle to deliver
Mhm.
something specific, but your knowledge base is a lot wider. So niching, I would say yes, it's an advantage. Is not to necessarily take anything from people who generalize. Those things niching and generalizing, I attribute to markets or environments.
Yeah.
You might be in a small space that it might not have enough people to support that niche from a business side. But as an artist, find that one thing you're really passionate about. You're not trying to sell it. You're just trying to create something and be good at it. Yeah, just focus on that one thing. But business wise, it will be. I think this term is determined by markets. That's what I would think about niche and generalize it.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely interesting. And like I said, you kind of started in this fine art space and then transitioned to design.
Yeah.
Um, First of all, what is the difference between fine art and design? And how did you kind of blend those two and kind of move more into that space?
Okay. So art. If you're not aware, this is one of the internet's biggest debates. um, everybody has an opinion on it, but art is for me. It's a the difference. The primary difference is that a friend actually said this: art pleases an audience of one, and design pleases a wider audience. That's the primary difference.
Oh, wait, say that again. I've never heard that before. What is it?
He said that, and man, I don't want to call his name because I feel like it was he's a friend, but I just can't remember which one of them.
Yeah, well, tell him.
But
Yeah, smart. I like
yeah,
it.
if he sees this, he'll know. He said that art pleases an audience of one, and design pleases a wider audience. That's the primary difference. That said, Paul Rand also said design is art and art is design, but there are specific differences. Uh, Art is more subjective. It's expressive. It's form. It's a whole bunch of different things regarding subjectivity, and usually it has a message to deliver, but it's from the creator's perspective. Design, for me, always starts with solving. either identifying and solving a functional problem, and then we deal with the aesthetic part of it, which is also design. But what design has is a process of functionality. If this bad and good, the differences between bad and good design is that it has to work or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, then it's not good. Art now adds that emotional attachment. Art adds the thinking behind the aesthetic is really the artistic mind coming in, and when you merge them together, you get this really amazing result that people can say it works and it looks great. So that for me anyway. That's my opinion on art and design is the differences. But when they come together, you have a process, a creative process that has a functional purpose.
So what comes, would you say that when you're thinking about design, are you thinking about the function first and then the art and creative? Or is it at the same
Um,
time, or it depends on what you're creating?
well, I have to contextualize these things. In a business sense, you'd normally be trying to identify a problem that needs to be solved or improved. So you'd be looking at the function. A car, for example, the first engine that was ever built didn't even have a body to move it. They put that on after, but somebody came up with an engine, and it worked. Then they found a way to now put it to use, but they already had the purpose in mind, and that car compared to today, you'd say was so primitive. But what they did was that they already solved the problem of motion with the combustible engine. So now they're over the years, all they've really done is improve the user side, the consumer facing side, which is how comfortable it is, what it looks like, and how many buttons do you have to press. And that's really the design part of it. But like I said, once you put art in, it becomes a creative process of aesthetics and function.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really if you're going to talk about design from the perspective of uh, of something looking good, then it's only because there's an artistic component added to that. A designer, you know what? I should clarify this part because it's pretty complicated. It's a complex thing. It's not complicated. People make it complicated. So let me simplify. Um, Design from, let's say, your perspective could be something totally different when you talk about design. But what we don't normally hear is and I think Brian Collins actually said that everybody would speak about design differently because
Mm-hmm.
of what they're doing. But if you take away all these different disciplines, then design really is, as I've said, it is physics to life. It's we're doing it every day. We're designing every day because we're solving things. We're trying to find ways to do things better. So the overall principle, once you understand that, then you can start adding in these different disciplines into it. So a graphic designer will speak about design differently from an architect, but
Mm-hmm.
they're really doing the same in terms of identifying something that needs to be improved or a problem that needs to be solved. So if I'm shopping in a store and I see a packaging that I think could be better, I'm going to say that could be better. That's me thinking about the design. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with the packaging. I just think it can be better. So I'm trying to improve it. If something is not working, then now you're looking at solving it because that's a problem. So everybody's doing the same thing in a different way, basically, regarding design as a principle. And I think the principle is where people get disconnected or confused, and we are start defending, whether what is design and what is art. And I'm like, no, there's a principle, a process. They both have different. They both have a process, but it's trying to find harmony between the two. So you don't have the artist over here and the designer over there. You kind of bring them together and say, hey, this is our objective, and both of them will now do what they need to do to achieve that objective. But uh, as a team, you could
Yeah.
say that, right?
Yeah. No, I like that. And I think you're right. It's like they're one and the same, but it's like we have to think of them as both equally as important. Which brings me to, how does this kind of our topic of how does this bring a brand to life?
Hmm.
Because I think one of the things that I love about brand is I always think about brand as the feeling someone has about you or the
Right.
organization. I'm very much about the storytelling piece of it, but then you have people that are very much that maybe aren't on the brand side that say, well, this needs to bring in money directly. It's not working, you know. So
Right.
when you think about what you just said in terms of design and function, but also art and creativity and making it look nice, where does that fit in terms of making a brand successful, do you think?
This might annoy a lot of people, but I'm really good at that. So,
Hey, I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? It's like we all think a little
um,
differently, and it challenges
right.
us.
So, of overall 20 plus years, I started really early in the industry, and so 20 plus years, there's been certain constants, and people are always a variable. Brand has so many definitions, um, you know, and I think that's really the issue. So you're right. The brand is everything you just said. It's not a tangible thing, and I think people always try to design the brand. You don't design the brand. Um, the brand is something that forms over time because of good business development, product development, and management. And once the brand starts to form, that's when you bring in the branding, which is another debatable thing. Branding for me is all your communication, what I call functional assets, functional brand assets. That's branding. Communication is in any form that represents that brand, whether it's audio or it's written. You need a really good copywriter first of all, and then visual. So when you're bringing a brand into success, I think if you're a lot of times if you arrive 6 months or a year into a new brand, you're too late. You have to now fix everything. Okay, if they didn't get it right before, you're a little late. And so once that brand forms, and I'll give you a simple example of this. I've actually asked this question to when I did a lecture some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to understand a brand, you have to ask yourself, what would life be like without your name? What would your life be if you didn't have a name, the name you have, right? And it's a simple concept, is that when your parents had you, they didn't, the name they came up with was an assumption of who they saw you and said, hey, this is the name I think fits. Right? So an entrepreneur came up with a product and just said, this is the name of the company, and this is what we're trying to do. They have no idea where this is going to go yet. That's just an assumption. Your parents are the same thing. I like to use people to talk about brands because it's brand for me represents a mindset and the company vision, the mindset of the people. It represents the people in the company. That's what a brand
Yes,
is.
agreed.
So as you grow up, personality starts to form based on your interactions with the environment and the people around you. The first time you heard your name, you don't remember it, but the first time you heard it, that's when it connected to you that they're talking to you. So now you have an identity. That's your logo, and or your name, whichever you want. Christ is the logo for Christianity, that kind of thing. So now we need to actually give a visual reference for this identity. And you're growing up. You've acknowledged that you have a name now. Your identity now starts to form because you're associating, or people associate everything that they experience with you in a conversation with your name. Now they're either going to say, "Oh, that's such a horrible person," or they're going to say, "Wow, he's great." Right? That's the brand. That's the
Yes.
identity forming. And your parents are still there to a point, and then when they're really letting go is when you've formed who you are, and they have confidence that you can go out in the world and function on your own, and you're not going to ruin anything. Even if you make mistakes, you can find your way back. So you need a core value to build a foundation to build on. That's brand. Everything else, your ID card, the clothes you wear, how you speak, all this stuff, that's branding.
Mm-hmm.
So when an entrepreneur comes up with an idea for a company without a product, that's bad, in my opinion. You should have had the product first, and then you kind of, first of all, you really need to know why you're making the product. Is there something that this is going to fix? Did you identify something that you need to make this and invest all this money? Most brandings that I've seen is when I go to expos, and I'm like, where are all these companies? Where do y'all come from? You have branding and everything. Your product's not even out yet, right? But it's the importance that people ignore, the fluff they call it. All this stuff is important for the company because the company cannot speak to people. The company cannot, as an entity, cannot speak to consumers in the way that brand does. And how, in the sense of a company, the brand starts to form when you and anybody else goes to that business and experience that service or bought that product. You're going to start telling your friends. They're looking for something. Oh, Philip has it, but Philip is not even a company. I just know that I own the company. He said Philip has it. So what's going to happen is that, which I did with FedEx, by the way. Can't remember the agency's name. People never said Federal Express. The agency discovered that they said FedEx, and that's why they call FedEx today. They went back and said, "Hey, nobody says Federal Express. It's too long." Right? So if I owned a business and they're going to say, "Hey, go to Philip," my brand knows Philip, so I don't have to create a logo called Philip, and my branding is going to represent Philip, whoever Philip is, and whatever that company represents is really now not just me anymore. It's now everybody that works there. They're Philip, and they represent whatever I had in mind or whatever the company became over time. Philip as a brand represents that, and all of that is what I call branding. But the brand is not. You can't do anything with it. It's just the personality, as they call it. So now art and design comes into play when you've established certain things. Initially, I can't deny the fact that if you're going to go public with a new company, you do need a name. So you're trying to get a logo done. You want people to identify you. But at some point later, anybody in the industry will tell you that you're going to rebrand if you didn't do it right the first time. You're going to rebrand yourself because now what you thought you were is not what you are now, and you have to rebrand everything because Mark Posh, I always share this. He says this. He said that a logo is a symbol of change. It's not a change to a symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're rebranding, is really you're representing that there's an internal change in the company. And David Breyer, I like that guy. He says it's impact, right? You have to stand out. You have to always be thinking ahead of that. Whatever you've done now, somebody's going to try and copy it. So you have to always be going forward, right?
Yes.
So branding, design, art, you're trying to find ways to involve the creative aspect of it into the business solution all the time. And that's how you bring a brand into itself and success. But it all starts with the proper business management. Everything else is just representing. And if you don't have, I can't remember this quote. If you don't have the right creative process and people and thinking, all that good business is just going to go to waste because now nobody even knows who you are. There's no way to represent it. The flip side of that is that there are horrible brandings out there that have successful companies, but that is because of the business management. So how do we get this company who has great management and great products, they're innovating all the time, to have a great looking logo and a great looking branding? You have to find a way to sell that make that valuable to them. Because if you have a pretty logo and your business sucks, I promise you'll never get brand success. That's just the reality of it. So when you put art and design into a business, it becomes a whole different thing altogether. You have to always be thinking about leveraging the assets. Do we need to create a new logo? Do we need a new poster or whatever? That said, I have to highlight the luxury brands. They have been doing great with their displays. Fashion brands.
Yes.
Hermes, I think, in my opinion, they're all amazing, but Hermes did something really amazing. I don't remember the artist's name, but their entire display was made of paper, and it was a detailed space theme. And that's the art. Is like they're leveraging the creative thinking to have an impact on the store display. I can't say if it was related to anything they were selling or it was highlighting anything. I don't remember the whole article, but the fact that it caught attention is enough. And that's the value of art. You want to have the impact and awareness, and you can't measure this stuff. It's just It's the impact of a brand, the awareness of a brand is based on its what they call voice, or how many people speak about his brand is really how you measure the success of your branding. There's no data sheets or marketing numbers to show you that, right? So consumers are your proof in your brand success.
Yeah, I like that. And I think you're not the first person who's talked about kind of that distinction between brand and branding. And
Right,
I think it's an important one. And I think it's also interesting when you're talking about brand is really about the people and the
right,
values of an organization. So
right.
then to that point, I would assume, and you tell me if I'm incorrect here, that let's say whoever has started the company, that as
Mhm.
they start to hire people, the need to hire people, first of all, for the owner to have their values real clear,
Right,
and then to hire people that share and get those values will help build the brand and really, grow it and sustain it is
right.
really the most important piece. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. It's basically you first of all you have to have an overall objective. You need to know what are you doing. Then you can have great creative. You can have
Mm-hmm.
great results, creative results, whether it's in design or art, because they really should be there. I've said this in an interview before. In my mind, whether it's physical or not, uh, you have three. Let's just imagine three departments. You have the creative department, and you have your which design can be in.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the business, and then there's marketing. So in advertising and marketing, for me, that's how it would be. Advertising is really there to build the awareness and put out really great um, visual communication. Marketing is supposed to try and leverage that to sell it. It's not the job, as Dave would say, it's not the job of advertising to sell it's to sell you something. It's there to build awareness. Marketing often uses advertising as the bad child. It's like you did not do your job, right? But marketing is supposed to be selling stuff. Marketing develops the strategies in sales, and sales influences sales strategies. Advertising is on the branding side for me. That's where advertising is. It's building the awareness, making everything look great, people fall in love with it, with something really impactful that touches them, and you have to align that to a business objective. Without those people on the um, I don't want to say academics, administrative, or business people.
Right.
Those people are important. They should really be focusing on running the company so brand can have fun. And I say fun relatively. I mean, it's serious business, but business, whether it's accountants or product developers, I mean, I don't know all the names of these people, but if you're in a company that's doing product development, that's what you need to do. And you need to have the business people managing the other stuff, the paperwork, all this. Like in a B2B space, you need
Mm-hmm.
to really be looking at connecting with the right people, identify your targets. You don't identify 50 leads and narrow it down to 1, 3 at the end of each month. You're going to be right back at square one. You have to really identify the target, the people that you want to sell to and connect with, and you build. And I'm not going to say a relationship because that takes time. You're going to find out what they really need and see if they're the right people for you. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Without that, no matter how pretty everything is, it's not gonna do well because there's no value in the creative stuff. You're like, okay, you have a pretty logo, you have really great advertising, but this product sucks, right? Or your company's horrible, your customer service is just bad. I don't want to buy anything from you. That's what's gonna happen. And the first time somebody said that, it's gonna spread much faster than the good news. So now
Yes.
you have to fix all these things, and then you put everything on top of that. It's I've used this one a lot too. My friend, he said, another friend of mine, he said, you can't wrap a turd in Christmas paper. Okay? So you need to really be. If I get a gift from you, I want to make sure that if the paper is a brown paper bag, just shove it in a brown paper bag. I'm fine if it's a great gift, but don't put it in Christmas paper and give it to me and try to tell me that it's great because it's
Yeah.
not. And that's really the basis of the brand of brand design and development, it has to have the business and the brand, and it's not that they're separated. But if you want to have impact, your brand needs to have fun. You need to be investing in money from, in your company, that it will always be innovating and growing, that you can have that money to put on the brand side, for it to go find the most amazing artists in the world and just create something that will give your company that impact that you want. And packaging design is one aspect that artists can get involved in. Really, like, it's amazing what can happen in packaging. And then now we have the technology to make packaging interactive. So it's really a question of, what are you trying to do? What is your intent of your brand? And I'm not saying brand purpose. That's also another big debate. I don't know why people debate so many things.
Well, I feel like, and this isn't just in branding or business, this is in various elements of life. People want to find the quick fix. What is the quickest thing that I can do to get the best results, right? I always use fitness as an example. Can I take a pill and lose 30 pounds? No, that's not how it works, right? Like, and if you do that, it's probably very unsafe. So I think that that's always the thing. But I think, you mentioning, again, brand starts so early on and is so deeply rooted throughout the company. It's not a marketing ploy. It's not an afterthought. Right. It's really central to the company. And it's hard because sometimes, like you said, sometimes they're going through a rebrand. Sometimes people have different, one person says one thing, one person says the other. And not everyone's on the same page. And it's very clear when that happens, unfortunately. So is there any tip that you have if an organization, or whether it's a person even starting out, and they're trying to build brand, where they can get everyone on the same page, or certain questions that maybe they should ask, or any steps that they can take, just like one or two off the top of your head?
Yeah. So obviously it starts internal, and I would I'd call that, you need to jumpstart your people. You need to, I think remote working was a great opportunity a lot of people may have missed, and some may have taken advantage of, is where you find out who is actually valuable and who isn't, who is really stacking off, who can work without the overseer. Creatives actually can do that, and a lot of times they get the bad rep, but you have to excite them. You have to give them an objective. Bob Gill said, if you don't have an interesting problem, well, he didn't say those exact words, but if you don't have an interesting problem, essentially, you won't have an interesting solution. So to get creative people excited about your company, you have to be an excited company, meaning that not every company ever sees into parties. I'm not talking about parties. I'm just saying, what are you doing as a company to excite your people? Jumpstart them with a circular feedback loop. You need to have an action, and a response. When that response happens, you have to observe that response, and then you analyze it, and then you change the action the next time around. So you have to get everybody in your company to understand and value the brand the same way you do as the owner or the managers, and get them in that loop. They should be able to go out of that space, and if somebody says, hey, you work for that company, your shirt, and they should be proud enough to say, yeah, you like it, or just have a conversation with somebody, and then take that information back and say, hey, you know what, I heard that this was happening. I was on the bus or driving, whatever. I don't know if this is, we should probably look into this. An art director I met years ago said that he likes to take the bus because that's where the people are. He can hear what they're saying. He'd park his car and just take the bus. And it depends on where you're living. That's a great thing to do, actually. When I lived in the closer proximity to the corporate area, I would just walk home. Walk to. I'm kind of what's the word? Insomnia. I have an insomnia problem. I just walk out and I go to just frequent the bars, the strips. They have like restaurants, everything open, and then I walk back home at 4 a.m. And I was not privileged. I was fortunate enough to not have to get up at 9 a.m. at that time. So I just sleep till daylight, and I do it all over again every day. Go to sunrise. And people were like, what do you do? I say, I drink coffee all day. I didn't tell them anything that I do professionally because I didn't have a preconceived idea of who I am. And then to see work that I've done, or see me in a project, because I've always been in the public space when it came to work back then in production entertainment, doing fashion shows, live shows. So a lot of the stuff I learned about brand design was from that. It wasn't necessarily creating logos; it was being around people and being in the environment. One year, one of my favorite projects was when the team that I was working with, we did the Guinness anniversary. I can't remember what year, and we wrapped this entire place in black and had the gold logo, the mark popping out in different areas, and it was a big event. And I was like, I mean, that's probably why I don't sleep, but I would just stay till the end of the event, every event. And I'd be like, wow, I was on that. I helped with that. And brand as a process started to form for me. And I said, you can't sell this, like, you can't package this and sell it. It's really a process that people have to invest in.
Yeah. And constantly doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I love how David Breyer, he's always talking about constantly doing stuff. But you have to be excited. It's not constantly and tired and bored.
Yeah. There has to be an energy behind it. I think you're right. It's having conversations. It's being around people, having some sort of consistency, which again, it seems like a simple thing, but it's something that constantly has to happen. I appreciate you kind of sharing that. We're just coming to our time here. So if people want to, you do a lot of writing and a lot of posting on social media and Medium. If people want to kind of learn more about anything we're talking about or connect with you, where is the best place to do that?
Well, I'm on so LinkedIn is a great place. I have fell in love with LinkedIn and Twitter, and now I write on Medium under the name Phillip J. Clayton. And anywhere you actually look Phillip J. Clayton, I think you'll find me. But yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter are my favorite places. Facebook is more of, I wouldn't say go to Facebook. You can find me there. Add me. That's fine. But,
LinkedIn and Twitter, yes.
Yeah, Facebook is a great place. I know people don't like that, but it's not the place that I type the stuff I talk about here all the time. So LinkedIn, Twitter, and Medium if you want to read anything I've written. The partner agency's website is actually knowthename.com. That's N-O, not K-N-O-W, N-O, the name.com. And we haven't really updated much there. We've been busy, but that's a website you can always make contact with us as a company through.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Nice. And the last question I like to ask all of my guests, Phillip, is what is one word or quote or mantra that you try to live by every single day?
That's a really thinker there. Absolutely. All right, let's
first
go.
One that it's always, I've been asking it for 7 years. It's my favorite question to ask. Right. The first thing that comes to mind.
I would say overall, the one thing I've learned is never assume that people do what you would do. Let's just go with that.
That is a good one. A consistent one to learn as well. Yes.
I've learned. Yes, that's exactly it. I'm always learning that. I live by it.
I love it. Well, I thank you so much, Phillip, for your time today and just kind of sharing that difference between, brand and branding and art and design and how they all intersect. I think you kind of brought some new concepts here, and I greatly appreciate you being a part of the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. I really did. Loaded questions. I don't take the time, but it's fine. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.